morning, everyone. We're thrilled that we can be together and learn together. I'm just going to go around the panel for a moment and ask each of them to tell us in a nutshell what they do and their company does. Srinivas.
Okay. Hi, my name is Srinivas Krishnamurti, and don't worry, there won't be a spell test at the end, so no need to take notes on that. But I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Zugata, and we're focused on reimagining annual performance reviews.
Hi, I'm John.
Sure. Can you say that again? Reimagining
Performance reviews.
Yeah, I'm not sure everyone heard that. Go for it.
No problem. Hi, I'm John Hage. I'm founder and CEO of Charter Schools USA. We operate 85 schools for 75,000 students across 8 states, and we have about 9,000 team members on our team.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Jill O'Connell. I work at Cengage. It's an education and technology company focused on the learner. I've been there for 4 months, and my prior experience has been all in financial services.
Hi, my name is Eddie Liu. I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called Shiftgig, and we are a mobile marketplace that connects businesses with qualified vetted hourly workers. Today we have about 2,000 businesses across the US, and we have about 20,000 hourly workers, and we raised about $56 million in venture capital. We have offices in 12 cities across the country.
I'm Darren Bounds. I'm the founder and CEO of Breezy HR. Breezy is essentially a full stack end-to-end recruiting product designed to help companies attract and collaboratively hire their teams.
And I'm Judy Olian. I'm Dean of UCLA Anderson School of Management. We're both a content provider and I would imagine a client to some of the ed tech companies here. So we're talking about the talent war. Just this past Friday, we saw unemployment rates at 4.4%, the lowest in 10 years. Many economists would call that absolutely busting full employment. And so the question of how do you get the right people to the right place at the right time is a very significant question for our economy. And the biggest generation now in the workforce are millennials. So I'll start with a focus on millennials. We know that millennials seek challenge, opportunity for growth. They want to be heard and respected and inspired by what the company does. They want to feel that they can be aligned with what it stands for, and they want to have balance in life. Balance. So let me start with the panel and say, is this possible? How do you do it? Or do you just need to educate the millennials and say, grow up? Okay, let us start.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I think the way you describe that, though, that probably sounds like everybody. I mean, I would imagine that everybody wants those from their jobs. I realize that the behavior that this millennial generation is exhibiting is a little different. But I don't believe that there's really any silver bullet solution to this. Personally, I think that building out an Xbox or getting a foosball table doesn't necessarily align you with millennials. I think that what I'd like to see, and I think what companies are going to be doing in the future, are starting to listen more to their employees throughout the employee lifetime, gathering new signals, establishing deeper relationships with them so that they can understand not necessarily problems with their employee base, but problems within their organization that they can improve on an ongoing basis. Because I think that this isn't a challenge that's just with millennials. We're going to see it with centennials. And with the pace of innovation and technology in the space, I think that companies are going to have to be going through a consistent evolutionary process year over year. This isn't something that has a start and a finish.
So I'm going to challenge you in a moment, or everyone in a moment, about how you develop deeper relationships with the gigabyte generation that is in and out. But let's continue on talking about the millennials for a moment.
Do you mind if I jump in? Because I'm going to agree, actually. I'm not going to debate what you said. I think that millennials as a generation, I'm going to take a step back and walk away from generations for a moment, but when you think about the force of technology and how we've had to think faster and better, technology has forced us to do things differently. And generations grow up, and as they grow up, there's different life stages that they experience, and their needs and their wants change. And I think that's all reasonable. And I also am going to echo what you said in regards to listening to the prospective employee all the way through what I would call the alum, through your talent continuum. Everyone sits within your talent customer base, both internal and external in the marketplace. And we, myself and the CPO, we are on a talent listening tour. So we're hitting 10 sites, and we're spending time hearing from the employees. What do they want? What do they need? And then in return, them hearing from us what we think is reasonable. We have to approach things thematically at an aggregate level. We can't solve all problems. And they're very appreciative, and they understand that reason. So I actually I'm in violent agreement with you.
Anyone else want to jump in here for a moment? So let me challenge you with a couple of, well, some of them are factoids and some of them are observations. One is that when you do surveys of the different generations in the workplace, for example, the next biggest generation are the boomers in the workforce, and then after them the Xers, there's a little bit of impatience and rolling of the eyes when it comes to the millennials saying, really? I mean, have you paid your dues? You've just arrived? What do you know? You have something to learn? Do we absolutely have to listen to you? Do we absolutely have to give you feedback by the minute? Do we absolutely have to catapult you into the corner office 2 minutes after you've arrived? So, Srinivas, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the kids who are coming into the workforce are so different than, at least my generation of people, right? We came to work and we learned a whole bunch of things at work, and the kids coming in now, they have a whole bunch of skills that a whole bunch of us have been around actually may not have. Like if you think about just social media as just an example of how they use social media versus our generation, it's so vastly different. So sometimes you have to wonder if we're slightly out of touch as well, and maybe we could actually learn from them, right? So rather than trying to alienate them and saying, look, you guys are kids and you haven't paid your dues, and that's the typical hierarchical top-down way in which we have managed our people for the longest time, and it hasn't really worked. So maybe this is a time for us to rethink how we think about managing, how we think about employees coming into the workforce, and going by the value that they bring to the table versus focusing on their age or what their needs are.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there as well. I think one of the things that we found with our team members, and we have a lot of, our average employee is a 27-year-old female, right, a teacher in a school, is that they are looking for meaningful work, but that meaningful work doesn't necessarily mean it's within their millennial mindset alone. So I think they benefit from generational sort of conversations as much as we benefit from learning from them. And there's also this sort of understanding that there's going to just be more turnover. That is kind of part of it. Like, I don't think our goal necessarily needs to be with millennials to reduce turnover. It needs to ensure that the meaningful work they have is connected to the outcomes that they want. And knowing that 3 to 4 years might be the lifespan for some of those folks, and sort of build that into your model up front. Recognize that, build the technologies around that, the training around that, and have that as a part of what you do, and understand that that's still only one piece of your workforce. You have folks from different generations coming in and going out, but knowing that that part can be used in a positive aspect, not seen as a negative.
Eddie, you might be the expert on short-term employment. Talk about why that's happening, what the advantages are for the supplier, namely the person who's working, and how do you respond as a company that wants to have a culture but is surrounded by these short-termers?
Yeah, so in our company, we have about 20,000 people that use our mobile phone to pick up shifts. And a large demographic of that is millennials. We have to have a smartphone. But we have people of all ages. And the average amount of time the average number of shifts that the average worker picks up, we call them specialists, is about 34. So oftentimes that's over a 3.5-month period. Most of them have a part-time job and they're using Shiftgig to supplement their work. And we think that's just part of the mentality of that age group. And part of it is they work at a Staples or they work at a Walmart, they're trying to pick up extra shift. Or Christmas is coming and they're trying to make some extra money. Or they're between and they have some time in their school semester. And because of technology, in this case the smartphone, and which is the ultimate information equalizer, and they're able to go on and find a part-time, a very short-term job on a Friday night when they have time.
So there's
And
no
so
illusion of loyalty, there's no illusion of longevity in those kinds of roles?
No, I think there's absolutely an experience, right? And because they will go back to the same workplace employer if they have a good experience, and so they will rate the client, and if they rate the client higher, will tend to show those jobs more frequently.
So let's talk a little bit about what the new employment model is, whether it's for the millennials or the centennials. I mean, we're talking about the gig workforce, and I think certainly in Silicon Valley, and I'm from California, I know our graduates, of MBA graduates, come 2 years, if they're not seeing some movement on their resume, they're thinking, I might be getting stale. And this is not temporary workers. This is people that are really in professional capacities. So how do you create a sense of a deeper relationship? And somebody used the word deeper relationship. It might have been you, Darren. How do you create a sense of that deeper relationship? And is the ideal to, in fact, try to stretch it out, or just recognize that this is the model and optimize that 2-year period as the best possible, and it might come back in 5 or 10 years to be your employee again? So talk about how you leverage that. I don't know, Jill, you want to start?
I think it depends on the type of roles you're talking about. And I think that for entry-level positions, there is an expectation that unless you provide them a new or different opportunity within a certain period of time where they can grow, that they will move on. And frankly, they should. And I think companies can think about that as success. If they're out as an ambassador and they had a great experience, they may return. They may be a boomerang, and I think that's okay. Now, where I don't think it's okay is there are critical roles within a business that will impact continuity, strategic initiatives, et cetera, in which I think you have to have a different mindset around retention and the strategies that you impose for those roles. So I don't think it's one answer. I think you have to look at the roles, the population for those roles, and what you're trying to accomplish.
But sometimes it's not up to you, the employer. It's a very significant and crucial role in terms of continuity of client relationships, but this person owns the cards. And
Well, I think there's an understanding, and I think what you can have is great talent management practices around those the criticality of the roles. And there's an assumption or an understanding or a contract, a career contract that you have to have. And from an employee-based perspective, it's not going to be the same. And I think that's okay. And so I don't think they hold all the cards. If there is an understanding or a contract, the employer and the employee, entry-level positions do not last forever. And if there are not opportunities or career pathing or next learnings, that's okay. If they leave with a great experience, that's your reputation, and they spread the word. If there are critical roles and you don't have the right retention strategies as an employer, well, you should. That's a problem that you have. And there will be an impact of that loss where they may not be in those other positions.
Darren, what's your take on that?
Well, you know, I think I see a lot. I actually wrote a blog post on this last week on the subject, and I see a lot building as a software, as a CEO of a software company, I see a lot of overlap between the problems being solved in customer success and what I would call employee success. And I think that, you know, as a SaaS company, we have a very fundamental organizational unit called customer success that's tasked with, you know, establishing an early relationship with our customers, helping them through the onboarding process, making sure that it's as frictionless as possible, and then engaging with them at key points throughout their relationship with us. And in doing so, we are able to identify areas of friction throughout the process, and we try to ease them through it. Now, that definitely helps us retain customers and keep them longer. But one of the more important things that it does for us is it tells us what's wrong with us. And it allows us to push that back into our product development and reduce those friction points. Because if these are the types of customers we want to retain, we can fix that so future customers of that same persona type aren't going to have that problem and will stay longer. So I think
So the analogy
is that companies, by establishing kind of these relationships earlier in the process and maintaining them and fostering them with different data points and obviously a lot of data to back this up, will be able to retain these employees longer. And I don't think millennials are job hoppers. I think it's just it's a symptom of a problem in the companies that are having this high churn problem with millennials. And that by identifying these friction points, they'll be able to solve those problems.
I'd like to debate that. I think millennials are job hoppers.
Okay.
And I mean, the average millennial changes jobs every 2.5 years.
Why do you think
that's just a statistic? Because I think they grew up under a parent and that said, you deserve the best, and the best is not being in the same place for 30 years. And so I think it's a combination of they were raised a certain way, and by their generation, the baby boomer generation, and the businesses don't offer a 30-year career anymore. And so they've seen their parents, and they've seen either like an older brother, an uncle, whatever, get let go, whatever. They've been through so many cycles. So they don't expect a 30-year career. That combination.
Isn't it also that they don't feel that they're learning at the rate that they want to learn as they stay? That somehow we've flattened the curve on learning?
I think that's part of it. So at Shiftgig, we try to keep, so this is our 220 corporate employees. We have career path and we have career conversations, and we try to keep people as long as we can. But I've had 3 people leave the company to start their own business. I can't find a position in the company that compares with them going on their own and starting a company where they have 100% equity.
But do you think it was about equity, or do you think it was about you not fulfilling something that they needed? Because I think that's the problem. I think that if you don't know, I think by capturing this data throughout their life cycle, it'll provide deeper insight into trends and areas within your business that are causing these people to leave with enough data, and allow you to fix it so that you can engage them and help them feel like they don't need to go elsewhere in order to accomplish that same goal.
I think there are multiple things that are conflating here. I think for example, if somebody wants to leave to start their own company, there's no way you can keep them. I mean, it's actually, you want to support them, right? Maybe you want to invest in them if you actually have a good idea and let them go, right? And there's a whole bunch of other reasons why people quit, and most of the time it is because they're bored. I mean, they're not challenged, right? They feel like they can offer more, and we're just not able to tap into that, right? And that doesn't mean they're going to go do a startup. In fact, I would recommend against that. Being an entrepreneur, it's hard, right? So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everybody who's bored. But certainly, there are other things that you can give them to challenge them and to help them grow. And I think the vast majority of the people will stick around. And I think it's a fallacy for us to assume that just because they're the younger generation, they want to hop every 2 years. I think they're more comfortable with hopping because they're not challenged. And I think my generation was a little bit apprehensive about job hopping, right? Because we're like, how is that going to look on my resume, et cetera. Now, if I actually see a resume where somebody's worked at a company for 5 years, I'd be like, what's wrong with you, dude? Why did you stick around for that long? So I think times have changed, but I think as long as people are challenged, they will stick around.
And I'll come back to you in a moment about what things do challenge, what structures do challenge. So go ahead, Jonathan.
Well, I was just going to say maybe something counterintuitive, which is we're acting as if the employee is the customer, and they're not. The customer is still the customer. And yes, you need high-quality employees, and millennials make up a great majority of that in the current dynamic, but that's changing as well already. And there's different types of millennials, and they have very different value sets. They're not all uniform. And I think that recognizing the benefits of what they give back and feedback is real. You absolutely have to adjust your model to some of the things that they're feeding back. I have these conversations often. Usually it's when I'm on the road and there's a handful of millennials in the car with us and we're traveling somewhere and they get the boss time and you just get inundated with, Mr. Hage, we need this and why aren't we doing this? But it's also a two-way conversation where they really want to hear from a different generational view as well, because they're hungry for the success that they've seen before them. They're hungry for continuity as well. They don't necessarily want displacement as well. They want experience that's different than displacement. It's different than insecurity that goes with the change that goes with it. So they're conflicted as well. And I think a lot of this has to do with great leadership. At the end of the day, I mean, it always comes back to this. I mean, you have to have good leaders in your organization, both millennial leaders and non-millennials, that have those kinds of ongoing conversations, using career path planning and all the other things that come with it, but also reasonableness. Had one just recently, come in and resign on me. And it was a loss that I didn't want to have. And I think he thought that I was going to sort of beg him to stay. And he was used to that from his other jobs. And the answer is that if you want to go, you should go, and I support you. By the time we're done with the conversation, yes, he's moving on. The guy's probably going to want to come back and work for me in 2 years, because the way I dealt with that transition versus sort of more of the controlling aspects that often take place in these relationships. So a lot of it has to do with that sort of psychology of understanding that they are different. They are going to have some displacement based on their choices. They're also going to go through learning curves that are going to benefit you and themselves. And if you treat them right, they're going to come back to you and be very loyal to you in ways that you don't yet see. I really do believe that.
Just make one comment about the employee is not our customer. My job, I'm the head of talent, and the employee is absolutely my customer.
Okay.
Everything that I build is for my customer, the employee. And if you think about the chain of impact,
Right.
Sort of happy partner, happy life, well, happy employee, happy customer. And that's really simplistic and naive for me to just throw out those words. But my entire role is to focus on my customer, who is the employee. Of course, high-performing employees, high-performing company, other outcomes, high retention, high engagement, all those things. But we do focus on the employee as a customer, so similar to how you're thinking about it. And then the second, I just want to ground us on what are we using from a range for millennials? Because everybody uses it different, and we're calling them kids and whatnot. When I think about the range in which we have built our programming, it's 1980 to 95. My husband is actually a millennial. He is younger than me, yes.
You could
but-
become president of France. Yeah.
But they're not all quote-unquote kids. And that's why I go back to there's life changes and stages and needs and wants that change. And so when I think about the employee as my customer, I always need to understand whether it's the prospective customer, so that new generation coming up and they have a whole bunch of wants and needs.
Yeah, and I'll
or-
just say this, I don't mean that they're not a customer, they're just not my primary customer. And I think I say that because the experience has been, if I have a student population of 75,000 kids who are actually not of the millennial generation primarily, right? They're the centennial generation coming up,
Or Z's.
right? They're partly my customer, but really that parent who's oftentimes still from my generation sitting there that is making that customer choice of where they go to school. So I'm dealing with 3 generations at one time, and at some point you have to choose which one's going to be your primary customer. Am I going to please my employees every time, or I'm going to let transition take place to perform a better product solution for our students? And it's a tough challenge, but I think good leadership vets the difference, but I definitely see them as a customer.
And let me also remind us all that the millennials are not the only generation in the workforce.
Exactly.
I mean, there are multiple generations with multiple needs. And if you look at surveys, there is some misalignment in terms of how each respects the other, how each values the other. And part of the job of leaders and HR people is to provide opportunities for each of those voices. Now, if we're very pragmatic, of course, we're going to focus on the millennials because as time goes on, they're more and more of the dominant group until they're surpassed by the centennials or the Zs. We talked about the fact that they want feedback, they want meaning, they want balance, but there is also this notion of a disruptive leap in knowledge after. It's not just this steady progression of knowledge. There's also this disruptive leap of opportunity of growth. And my question to you is, where can that happen, and how can big companies compete? Because on the one hand, and I can tell you from our MBA population, all things equal, voice is not seen as powerful in big companies. And yet, big companies sometimes have a lot of opportunities and resources behind them. So talk about how you leverage advantage in the smaller versus larger companies, specifically to be more attractive to employees, and especially millennials. So let's maybe start with Srinivas.
Yeah, I'll give you my own example. I was in a pretty big company before I left to start my own company. The frustrating thing for me working at the big company was not the lack of opportunities or the lack to make a difference, but the amount of bureaucracy that you have to put up with to get the littlest things done was just overwhelming. And after a while, it was just like so exhausting, more exhausting than the actual project that you actually want to build, right? And I was like, it's just too much work for me just to go to all these meetings and all these. I think, taking a step back, I think bigger companies tend to become risk averse, right? They put too many checks and balances. They don't want to, it's not that they don't want to innovate, but the bar is set so high that they don't want to fail, right? And so all these checks and balances that are put in place are viewed by people who actually want to make a difference as bureaucracy and red tape that we have to deal with. They're not letting me try something and fail, and that's frustrating. Right? And that's one of the reasons why I left to start my own thing, right? And I think in the younger company, that's the benefit that we have is, our motto is to like fail fast, right? We ship software every single day. Our intern from Waterloo, who just started last week, actually had his first code ship on Friday, right? A bigger company, that will never happen. And I think that's what the smaller companies can offer. And I think that's where the bigger companies need to reflect and figure out, hey, we do have smart people who can make a difference, but are we enabling them to make a difference?
But do you have the deep pockets that big companies would have?
Absolutely not, and that's why we're raising funding all the time, right?
Yeah. And so aren't there some advantages you can point to involved?
In a bigger organization?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have resources like we cannot even imagine. Right? I mean, the amount of people that they can throw at problems is huge. The amount of money that they have is huge.
If they can get off the dime.
Yeah, exactly. And oftentimes it's a go-to-market advantage too. I mean, they have salespeople. They have thousands of salespeople who can like go sell the crap out of the software, the rubbish software that you build, right? But which we don't have, right? But those are all the things that they have, but they're not able to tap into it because they create all this bureaucracy around the simplest things that frustrate too many good people who leave.
Okay, others. Talk about you're in a larger company now, Jill. How do you?
I'm in a smaller company now. I went from 46,000 to 5,000. So I feel like I'm in a small company relative, but on an absolute basis. And I think you have to be authentic to what you can offer, but also aspirational. And we do talk about what it is that we have to offer. So the reason why I joined wasn't for reasons of better benefits or better compensation or, new and different growth. It was impact. Right, so you have to really understand as a company what you have to offer, make sure it's clear, because it will attract the right people. Now, if they want big company, deep pockets, or stability, I would have stayed at Fidelity forever if stability was my plan. Incremental progress from a career perspective. So you just have to understand who you are and what you have to offer, and it will drive the right audience towards you, and it will retain the right people, but you can't be everything to everyone. And then your programs have to align with what you do offer from a cultural value perspective as an anchor.
Okay, Jonathan, do we reward talent in the right way in today's generational, fast-paced, high-churn environment?
Not usually, no. I think we miss it most of the time. I think we're trying to get there. I think that we're behind the curve typically. I think that we don't really fully still understand that fundamentals are fundamentals, and I think it's just like anything else. It's a trend, and there tends to be trend lines, and the millennial trend, and then there's this trend, and I think we have to be careful to not overcompensate to one extreme or the other. I think there's modifications that need to be made. I think that there needs to be really open listening environments at small group levels, even in big companies. I think that big companies are more challenged with the change than smaller. I definitely think that, because I do think meaning is more important than financial. However, do not underestimate the value still of financial. I mean, at the end of the day, a paycheck is a paycheck, and they look at their taxes and they look at their benefits, and they think about those things as well from that millennial generation. I'm having these conversations literally almost daily at this point. And I've also come to the conclusion that, that some turnover is good, and that the right amount in that generational component, and so almost having it differentiated by the type of employee is okay. So turnover at maybe a certain age level is different than another age level, and with a different skill set, and even with a different mindset. And so understanding that whole employee, understanding what they really want from the beginning, and building that around their career experience, and then allowing them to sort of, continually explore that. If you can't give them feedback loops, they're going to get frustrated, they're going to leave you, and they're going to leave you when you need them most, and you have to be able to be much more responsive and much quicker to fail fast. And you have to really do that. The larger you get, the harder it is to do that. And that's definitely a challenge we experience as we grow, adding almost 1,000 new employees a year, and probably 80% of them being millennials. And so it is something that we have to get better at, but we're also recognizing that we cannot be all things to all people all the time, and that our mission does, in fact, drive them. That is what attracts them. And if you're authentic to that, and authenticity, and I'll say this last thing, more than anything, they have a BS meter that's way better than any of ours. They really do recognize when you're selling them something that's not real. They are the most realistic about things. They see through it, and they have very strong authenticity ability to understand if it's really going to be meaningful work and it is doing what we say it is, or if it's too salesy and it's too fake. They will see through it really quickly.
Eddie, what's the right way to reward talent?
I don't think there's one answer for that. I mean, we recently talked about that in our executive meeting. We only have 200 people, and the millennials, the younger people in our company, which is probably close to 60%, the number one thing they wanted was wellness programs, which shocked me and the executive team because yeah, but we would have thought 401k plan would have been like the top thing, which is what it was very different. What
was the number 2 thing?
What was it? And the ability to work from home.
Right.
Right. Flexibility.
Yep.
So very different than like bottom line, what is pay and savings, right? And so, but that's, I think, fractured. If you looked at a manager level hire, I think the 401k plan was like the number one thing that HR came up with.
Well, these young kids are not going to be around to get their 401k in the company, so they're looking at something very portable. Yeah. What's your answer in the right way, Darren, to reward talent?
Well, I think my answer would be in a personal way. I think that we really need to be better at understanding each individual and what motivates them. Flexibility is certainly something that people are interested in, but there are going to be millennials that are interested in a 401k. I think it just depends on the individual and the situation, and I don't think we're really good today at understanding each person for the entire duration of their employment with us and course correcting.
Are you arguing for like precision medicine where we totally individualize how we respond?
I think so, yeah. And I
is
think,
that feasible?
Well, I think that it's difficult today, but I think it will be very feasible in the near term. I think that we're going to be able to capture many more signals from our employees over the coming years, and that those signals will allow us to make much more strategic decisions throughout.
I'd like to add one other thing I forgot to add, and that is one word that keeps coming back that you wouldn't think matters, but it really matters to, and I know we're talking primarily millennials, is mentorship. I get this feedback more and more and more, which is they really do want, and they don't need it every day. It's different than kind of giving them feedback just on their job responsibility and how they're doing. That is important. It's not enough. What they also want is they want someone who's been through something, who's been there, who's done this, to mentor with them some and to give them feedback that allows them in a holistic way. Not just, hey, is my job good? But how did my work-life balance work out? How did you do that? How did you figure through family planning issues? How did you work through sort of, financial, differences and what to do? And that has really resoundedly been given back to me more and more and more as a way to get meaningful relationships and keep people there. When they don't get that, they feel like they should get that and they need to go somewhere for that.
Srinivas, before you respond, I want to ask you a pointed question. I mean, you have software that enables you to collect feedback about performance. Back to the question of how do you reward talent in the right way? How does that program enable you to reward talent in the right way?
Yeah, let me talk about that in a second. But going back to the early discussion, right? I think what we're all saying in a slightly different way is there's no one size fits all, right? I mean, everybody is different, and what they care for is different, whether it's based on age or whatever. It doesn't matter. Everybody cares about different benefits and perks and what motivates them, right? So I think it's a fallacy for us to assume that we're going to create the system where, based on who you are, we can automatically tweak it and give you the right set of benefits. And I think maybe Netflix has probably got the most innovative model where they give you X amount of cash as your compensation, and you pick and choose whether you want to sign up for ESPP or not, right? Or you just want to take the cash and go home, what kind of health benefits you want to sign up. And so maybe that's another way to think about this, is you just give them X amount of cash based on the role or seniority, whatever it is, and let them decide what it is that they care about versus us trying to feel like we need to optimize all these different benefits and come up with a model that works for everyone. Because I think that's hard to scale, right, for larger organizations. Having said that, and shifting to performance management, I think the thing that we're noticing in performance management, which is the space that we're in, is the annual performance review. I think everybody here would agree it just is an absolute colossal failure. It just has not worked ever. And I think finally people are getting brave enough to say, you know what, we're going to ditch it, right? We're not going to do it anymore. But if you think about it, that's the easy part. Saying we're not going to do it is the easy part. But if you don't do it, what do you do instead? And that's where people are struggling with, right? Because if you think about it from an employee standpoint, sure, they don't want to fill out all this paperwork and all that stuff and waste a month of, doing all this performance management, but they still want feedback. They still want to grow.
So Srinivas, let me ask you to tie it back to why that's the right way to reward talent.
Yeah, I mean, to the earlier point about the discussion about, helping our people grow, because that's what people want, right? I mean, nobody comes to work saying, you know what, I want to suck today. I mean, we all come to work saying, you know what, I want to do my best work, right? So performance management should really be about rewarding people and enabling them to do their best work. And I think that's the shift that we need to have in the performance management space. And one example that I like when I was briefing an analyst is they said, look, you don't fatten a pig by weighing it once a year, right? I mean, which is what performance reviews are. You just grade somebody once a year and give them a grade and say, okay, off you go. But instead, we need to think about, okay, how do we invest in our employees? How do we help them develop? Because that ends up being a perk. That ends up becoming something that they care about, and one of the reasons why they'll stick around.
Okay, I don't want to run out of time. I have 2 or 3 more different questions, so we'll speed it up here, a bit like a speed date here. When you think about the gig economy and the churn economy, that really changes the compact between employees and employers around development. To this point, we've felt that it's really the onus is on employers to invest in their employees. Is this changing where that onus lies, where that responsibility lies, that it is now much more a self-driven as opposed to other-driven process? Darren, do you want to start?
Well, I mean, I think everything I've said so far is that I don't think that high churn is inherently, it should be the expectation of hiring millennials. I think that it's a symptom of a problem with the way that we manage our employees today. So no, I don't think that we necessarily need to change to the way that we grow and develop our employees to accommodate that. I think that.
So you still feel that it's an employer?
I think that it's an important part, but I think the way that we do it needs to be different. I think we need to be more personalized in our approach, and I think that the way that we develop them is probably going to be changed significantly over the coming years.
Okay. Somebody want to talk about that last point? Jill?
So we're actually moving towards employee-owned, manager, and company-supported. And so an employee is in the driver's seat and so we're empowering them to drive. But we're not off the hook. We have to provide the right offerings and the right level of investment for that employee. So it really is more of a contract, but the employee drives. Not all employees are looking for that development or growth in the same way. And so it does become more personalized, and so putting them in the driver's seat can help with that.
Have you shifted the cost investment in employees to more of the employee self-driven piece?
So what I would tell you is I just looked at utilization rates for self-paced, so sort of this employee-driven, go ahead, not good, not going to share them. So we have work to do there. We haven't come out with a statement. One of the things we are doing, so through these employee listening sessions, what we've heard from everyone is development and growth is important. And development means different things. It can be a set of experiences or exposure to get. You have a lunch with a mentor, or it is more traditional education or a program. And they've all said, we don't understand what exists today, and I don't have the time to do it before we can even get to quality. So the utilization rates mean nothing to me. So we are in the process of ensuring that they do understand what we have today, and secondly, providing them a new benefit or offering, which isn't fully approved yet, which will allow them, it's a non-monetary cost to the employer. Just like vacation hours, you get development hours. So if you want,
Yeah.
but
Because, of course, the cynical view of this is you've just passed on the cost in dollars and time to the employee. Now, some employers would say, well, I'm not around to reap the benefit, so why not? I mean, this is an investment in a person.
yeah.
So you're saying actually
We're not
that you're gonna-
transferring cost or
time.
or time. We're actually offering time, like vacation or a benefit, and we are still footing the bill for the corporate offerings. Now, if development to them is going to read a book down the street at a coffee shop, they can do that. There's no cost to anybody. There's a time cost, I guess you would say, but that's a
Right.
benefit we're talking about.
And
so.
you see that as opposed to the traditional leadership development programs where people go to classes that are company supported.
Yeah, I think if you have a culture of leadership and that's what you're pushing, I think leadership development programs are important because it anchors on what you're trying to build. But absent that, I think there are key talent programs or opportunities, but they're not all the same. So
Yeah.
this is a general, when thinking about 5,000 employees, that would be my statement.
We were talking earlier to a provider of online courseware who said that the biggest growth was in corporate consumption of these online programs, not universities or whatever. Not individuals. Any other thoughts on the onus?
Yeah, I mean, I
shifting?
think the notion of, putting the employees in control is probably a good thing, right? If you think about the traditional where it's the manager who's responsible for employees' development, we've done that for the last 30, 40 years and it hasn't really worked. I mean, at the end of the day, it's my career, I'm responsible for it, right? And so let's put the ownership and empower people to do that is the right way to go. And I think that's probably the future. So then the question is, how do you enable that? How do the processes change to put the power in the employee? And if you think about like the traditional spend, right? I mean, like the employees, like at the bottom of the pyramid is the individual contributors, and there's a lot of them. And as you go up, it's fewer, right? And I think the inverse is true from a corporate spend for learning, right? We spend most of our money up at the top with leadership and coaching and all that, and it kind of comes down when it's to the individual employee, and that probably needs to change a little bit.
Well, and what needs to change is measures of effectiveness, because we are investing a lot without very clearly tracking how it pays off, and of course, whether it's a retention tool or whether it's just part of the cost of doing business, no matter what the churn. Let me ask about use of analytics. And every one of you is in a position to use analytics in interesting and unique ways. So talk about how in each of your zones of your corporate focus, you're using analytics to advance the business. So why don't we start with you, Eddie?
Yeah, so we actually have a data science team, and we try to match success between a worker and a business and to try to get the best fits. And we'll measure it based off of the weather and the distance from where a worker is to the place of work and past history of that worker. And so that's like integral to having a successful outcome. So it's at the very core of our business. And we're trying to use some of that for our internal workforce as well as we think about career pathing, but it's part of our product. And so analytics is like, critical. I think we have unfortunately, we have 3 business intelligence tools we're using, and we're trying to merge them onto one platform because different groups are using it in different ways.
So you're looking for the best fit, and what are the variables that affect that?
I mean, it could be client reputation
Right.
and reliability. So if they pick up a shift, if they dropped a shift in the past. It could be, if it's an outdoor event.
Right.
If it's snowing in Chicago, the odds of them showing, what the likelihood, it could be pay rates.
Right.
So some of our clients pay higher than others, and if it's a higher pay rate, the likelihood of success is going to be higher.
So you can actually provide guidance around data. Okay, Jonathan, analytics.
Yeah, so, we're using a lot of data as well, and we're getting more and more, and we're using different tools, but what we find is that they're not a supplement or a replacement anymore. So they're a supplement minor ways, but they're not a real replacement for the previous conversation that was where that empowerment to the employee is done correctly. So it can't switch from one where it was all managerial to employee overnight. It has to be a thoughtful process with analytics as a part of it, and the data has to be presented so that the employee is in a position where they also understand that as they own the empowerment, they've earned the empowerment. So that the decision making that's now been given to them, whether it's in their own money and how it's spent, or in that environment and that role that they have. So we're going through that transformation right now as an organization. We're literally moving out earned empowerment not only to school leaders, but into teachers and into curriculum and into different levels. But it's through an earned empowerment model where they actually have to compete for autonomy, and they have to compete for opportunity and create a competitive environment that's also supplementing with the analytics. And so we'll use the data as a way to help in that observation and that decision making, but ultimately getting them in a place where they feel empowered, but they also recognize that they're still accountable because they went through that process the correct way. The accountability was a part of it, and they grab the accountability. They understand it. They see it as a way for them to get results. Because again, if they're mission driven and they're driving, in my case, student achievement, it's very clear kind of what that looks like.
Srinivas.
Yeah, two ways in which we use data. One is we do continuous feedback, right? People don't want to wait a whole year to get feedback, so we do continuous feedback. And the thing that we've realized is a lot of us don't actually work that closely with the manager, but the people that we interact with on a day-to-day basis actually have a good feel for what we're doing well and what we don't do well. So rather than asking the employee for like, hey, who did you work with? We use data to figure that out. So we look at who you're emailing, we look at who you're meeting with, we look at who you're slacking with. Those are all proxies for who you're working with, so we know who to ask for feedback. So it's all data-driven. And the second thing that we're also able to do with the data that we have in our system is to be able to recommend mentors for you within the organization. So for things that you're not good at, we will find you people in the organization who are great at that skill and match you as a mentor based on the data that we're capturing in the system.
Okay, Jill, quickly.
So I'll talk about two experiences. So the experience I came from, we actually had a data analytics team that worked with talent. So we could look at the portfolio of talent, understand what it was telling us, and inform decisions or have discussions and conversations with the executive team as to where to from here. Where I am today, we are in the process of data collection. So we are in the very beginning stages of using data to then tell us something, so sort of analyze and tell the story and then sort of inform decisions. But we're at the very beginning.
And Darren?
Yeah, so we use data usually on the top of a funnel when we're attracting talent to help us identify, like you are, appropriate fit. One of the areas that we're spending a lot of time using data, which I think is going to be part of a lot of one of the signals for employees throughout their life cycle, is conversational AI and using the data to automate conversations with the employees at strategic times to help, as you said, a lot of these problems can't scale without automation. So I think being able to use this technology and using the data to build conversations in an automated fashion.
Okay, a challenge here. One sentence each. One sentence each. What's the most innovative idea that you can share on recruiting talent that you want that will stay? The most innovating idea around recruiting talent.
You should start at the end there, I think.
I'll give my time to him.
I'll say, I know it's not innovative in my, I guess, but is maybe combining the data with the mentorship in a way that changes the employee-employer relationship. I think that's still untouched territory that we are exploring.
Okay. You're going to seed totally.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna see where all these people
Yeah,
go.
I don't know if this is innovative, but I think referrals. So friends like to work with friends, and good employees invite good, good candidates.
Do you give
And
referral
so-
bonuses?
And we do give referral bonuses, not on our worker platform, but at corporate. So we have a referral strategy both internally, but also
Okay.
with our workers.
Darren?
I think being able to really differentiate yourself from the competitors who are competing, or the people who are competing for the same talent locally, really creates a loop that allows you to attract better, high-quality talent through referrals, absolutely, but also organically. And I think that can be key.
Jill?
And so we, in my past experience, partnered with a company called Pymetrics, and we used them for sourcing. And so using gaming and data science, we were able to look at things beyond sort of resume data, self-reported, and it was cognitive, social, and emotional matching based on a success profile that we created internally over years of hiring.
Yeah, and I would just add, number one, I think analytics is now really enabling much better fit in terms of where you source and what you look for. And the other thing is, to the extent that you can convey the distinctiveness of what the culture is about, the values, what it's like to live and work at this company at the point of screening and filtering, that's a value to recruitment. We are out of time. Thank you so very much for being here. And to our panel. Thank you.